G'day photographers, it's Ben from TAFE, and I hope you are having a wonderful day wherever you are, or evening. It's morning here at the minute. I decided to set up outside to make this video about creating a time-lapse in Photoshop. Okay, this is just handling the editing side of things. We've talked previously about a time lapse, and essentially it is just a sequence of photos taken at a consistent interval. So it might be one photo every couple of seconds, it might be a photo every minute. It's a way to convey the travel of time. Yeah, so we've gone and made a sequence of images. I'll show it to you in this folder, and I can tell because I'm working really hard to name my folders in a proper way to reference them, that I took these photos in 2016 in August on the 16th, and then I've just given it some keywords. So this was in the Cert 4 video class, and it's a time lapse. Cool. So let's hop in. As you can see, we've got about 300 raw files, Olympus raw files, and they were taken at an interval setting of one photo every second for 300 seconds or so. Now, the key to ingest these into Photoshop is that they need to be JPEGs. So there's my raws in here, are my JPEGs. Lovely. Let's jump into Photoshop and let's go to open. Now, I'm on a Mac, so I'm going to press this little options button here. On a PC you might need to do that, or on a Mac you might need to do that. The thing is here, we want to bring all these photos into Photoshop. Now, my instinct says to me that I want to select all of them and go like Command or Control A to select all of them, or lasso around all of them or something like that. If you do that, you're going to have a tiny little problem. It's not going to, kick off this time-lapse process how we want it to do. So resist that urge. Going to hit Image Sequence, click on the first one and go Open. And there we're going to have a dialog box here called Frame Rate. Now, here's where you have to sort of know a little bit of maths regarding your time-lapse. You need to sort of set your frame rate here, and that's going to dictate as to how many of these photos make up at 1 second of your video. So rule of thumb is, if you're watching something at the cinema or if you're watching television, you're usually looking at something that's 25 frames per second. So if you want your footage to have a smooth kind of look to it, say it's clouds rolling in over a mountain, you're going to want to have your time lapse at 30 frames per second for that smooth look. Now you can change your frame rate, that's fine. It's no big deal at all. You just need to adjust it later, or you can adjust it in here. So if you want to have a slightly choppier look, or you want to make your time lapse a little bit longer, you might use 15 or 25, whatever. I'm just going to hit OK here. And what's going to happen, nice, is we're going to have a time lapse rendered out here, which we can scrub through and have a look at, and you can see it's a pretty exciting time lapse of this teacher, this handsome lad teaching a Cert 4 class. Yeah, look at that glorious check shirt. Alright, so that's what's going on there. Play button is here, and that will play from the playhead, which you can drag. Now as you can see, it's really choppy. That's not how the final video will look, but it's choppy because it's the first time we're playing it, and Photoshop is actually rendering a preview, and it's kind of storing that up in the computer's RAM. But when you export it, it should look good. Now, this little line here above the time lapse denotes where the footage has been stored in the RAM, and it's got a preview. So once it hits this line here, we should start to see it play really smooth, because it's been stored in the RAM. If we dropped our playhead back to here, You know, it's nice and choppy. Yeah, so get it in, hit play, let it chew through it once, and then the second playthrough, it should be really, 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 really nice and smooth. We've made a time lapse. Now we want to render it out. If we just go to File and Save As, that's going to save it as a Photoshop document. And if we bring a Photoshop document into Premiere or iMovie or you know, even just try to upload that to YouTube, that ain't going to work. All right, so to get it out of your computer and in a format and into a video format, we're going to go to File, we're going to go to Export, and we're going to go to Render Video. Okay, now if that's sort of hidden away for you, that's fine. Click on this little Render Video button down here. I like that one. It's going to churn a bit, at least on my computer, which is like 5 years old. So just be aware that when you're working with video, you're dealing with like hundreds of photos all at once in Photoshop. So everything moves a little bit slower. All right, so we can give it a name. TL, search for time lapse. It's going to go back into that same folder, which will work fine for me. Now, I'm going to leave this encoder here just because it works well. Format's good, and then we can choose a preset that'll work for whatever. So if you know it's going to go to YouTube, these formats are going to work excellent for YouTube. Yeah, so just for the sake of speeding this up a little bit, I'm going to choose a 720 YouTube. That's going to populate all this stuff, which is good. And then I'm going to hit render. Now, Photoshop is a little bit more technical than other time-lapse programs. If you want to invest in one of them, or if you want to sort of, you know, hack it together in iMovie or Windows Movie Maker, that works too. The process is just a little bit more MacGyver-y versus the Photoshop process, which is a little bit more, you know, it's a little bit of a clearer process, but it does involve you to, it is going to make you have to think about your frame rates and how you want to render it. So depending on whether you want to sort of hack it, you can use the really basic free software, or depending if you're a process kind of person, you can use Photoshop. But you do have to think about a couple of things a little bit harder. All right, let's hit render, and let's watch this wheel, this waiting wheel spin. So that's going to take some time to export, and I will check back in with you when it is done. All right, so that took probably about 8 minutes to export. Your computer might very likely be faster than that. Keep that in mind when you're working on time-lapse and video and stuff like that. It does require even more resources than photoshopping. Funny thing was, this video has taken me about 3 or 4 goes to put together because there must be some sort of crossover within the computer. When I would ingest the photos into Photoshop, it would crash the screen recording, or the screen recording would crash Photoshop. You know, it took several goes to get all of this to work up. So apologies if this video is a little bit disjointed. I'll try and edit it together. This video is rendered out now. So if we go back to our folder, we will find it down here. And I'm just going to hit spacebar to preview it. And there you can see a really, you know, solid time-lapse sequence there. It's come in as the 4/3 format because I shoot an Olympus camera. You might want to crop that down to, you know, be the HD format, or, you know, which is more of that widescreen look. That's totally fine. You can do that in Photoshop just by cropping. Or you can do a bunch of other things. Bring it into iMovie, crop it there. I think you can even crop in YouTube now. That is it. And thank you. Any questions, hit me up on Facebook, hit me up on email. You know where to find me, and I hope you thought this was beneficial.